The freedom of assembly is the right of the people peaceably to assemble. So it's a right granted to the people that's different from the government and the state. And I argue that it's a right of people to form groups and pockets of political identities that are different than the state. The right of assembly has been part of American history since the founding era. The Democratic Republican societies rallied around the right of assembly. Progressive abolitionists and suffragists used the right of assembly to gather and to form political movements, and we see it in the 20s in the progressive area. It's a right that has formed the framework for groups for much of our nation's history. About 50 years ago, the right of assembly disappeared from constitutional and political rhetoric, and part of the reason was contextual and historical. It just dropped out for various reasons, and another reason is the Supreme Court announced the right of association, not in the Constitution, different from my argument in my research, is different from the right of assembly. The reason that the framework of association doesn't work for the rights of groups is sort of an accident of doctrine that the Supreme Court has developed and started to rely upon. And it has to do with two categories the court has created, one called expressive association, the other called intimate association. And neither of those categories makes the kinds of lines that decide to protect or not protect groups consistent with the values that the Assembly Clause originally stood for. And so we have judges in courts who are deciding cases based on a kind of line drawing that's not principally rooted in our constitutional tradition. The article that I'm working on now is trying to apply the historical and theoretical ideas of assembly to the online context. So what does it mean to have groups online? Do we value these groups? And if we do, how do we protect them constitutionally? And I'm arguing that we ought to do that with the right of assembly rather than other possible frameworks.